What's going on, everybody? This is James, Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, returning guest, live once again, Jerry Carita from Thorny Comics. We're here to talk about two projects that he happens to have live on Kickstarter, Tales from the Cloakroom and the Grizzly Crew. Thank you for being here again.
Thank you, James. Good to see you, man.
Oh, man, absolutely, man. Look, the last time we talked, we were talking about Cicada Samurai. Just to get right into it, I remember this being kind of like the flagship of what you wanted to establish with Thorny Comics and to be an established publisher and being having the ability to release multiple projects, especially all within one time. So I'd say you've actually started off on that foot. Reign of Dracula, I got to speak about that. And now with these two projects straight out of 2024, like you weren't bullshitting.
Well, I'm trying. I'm trying. Now I'm in full frantic fulfillment mode, and I also, I'm doing Kickstarters for all these projects, and so something I had to do was set up a second account, which is like a little absurd, but it just happened to be that the Cloakroom project, which is an anthology, we had set when that was going to happen. And we didn't want to move it. And the Grizzly Crew project, which is my own thing that I am writing, just kind of crept into it. And I knew there was going to be overlap. I didn't want to have to push the second thing or wait for the Grizzly Crew for another few months. So I opened a second account. So now I'm in the kind of ridiculous position of running two Kickstarters at one time. And I don't know if you can see the bags under my eyes, but whew, it's like I thought about getting a second phone so I could keep hitting refresh on both campaigns and just like sweat it out right up until the final hours.
Well, luckily for you, you've of course surpassed funding for both projects. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
First, I mean, to get started on the Grizzly Crew, because it's literally a project that has another 12 hours until the campaign is completely done.
Right.
I remember reading where basically you said you heard that a lot of children's comic books always had a hard time on Kickstarter.
They do. And I learned and I knew that going in, and I did it anyway. And I don't fully regret it, but it definitely was challenging. And there are things I learned that I would probably do differently next time.
Understood.
But yeah, like the Kickstarter crowd is more, they're looking for things you can't get in stores. And I think a lot of stores carry stuff that's good for kids, because I think probably the most common question people get, apart from do you guys have the new issue of Saga, is do you guys have something I can give to my 8-year-old to read? You know what I mean?
Correct.
That's like the most common question. People who don't read comics, moms, dads who don't even read comics, are walking into comic book shops and going, I think my kid wants to read comics. What do you have that I can safely give to an 8 to 10-year-old? And so, all the stores carry something like that. The big two publishers, they publish like origin stories for all their superheroes that are like very kid friendly. So people don't have to go to Kickstarter for it. They go to Kickstarter for the more, not safe for work stuff, violent stuff, really indie kind of out there concepts that you're not going to find at like a big publisher necessarily. And so, they struggle a little bit more, and I'm seeing that. And but I hit my numbers, so I'm good. No complaints, no regrets.
Got you. That now, what basically in encapsulating a story like the Grizzly Crew, you reached out for a little bit of help, and that help came from your son.
Yeah. So what happened was, this was about 2 years ago, and it was the day that Midjourney came out, the artificial intelligence thing. And I think like everyone was trying to figure out how scary it was. Everyone was trying to figure out if they were going to use it, if it was the end of the world, is Judgment Day upon us? Like, is Arnold about to come through the window and murder everybody? So
Skynet.
I was in my office, Skynet and all that. So I was in my office messing around with it literally the night it came out. And he walked into my office and saw what I was doing. And this is before I did Cicada Samurai. So I had Cicada Samurai in my head. So the things I was feeding to the AI was like samurais and bugs and stuff. So I had all these like weird, like a wasp that looked like a monster and all these things up on the screen. And he walked in and he sees all of it. He's like, what is this? And I told him, I'm like, it's an artificial intelligence art generator. He's like, I'm 6, Dad. What does that mean? So I explained it to him, and then he started feeding me stuff. He was like, what about it? Can it make a Spider-Man monkey? And I'm like, I don't know, a Spider-Man monkey. And it pooped out like a dopey little gray-haired Spider-Man monkey thing. And then he said, what about a minion wizard? And it made like a minion, but like feathery for some reason, with like a little Harry Potter wand. It was weird. Like, I don't know why. And then he said, what about a pirate bear? and I pirate bear. And especially when those things first came out, the AIs and stuff, they're terrible with faces.
Oh yeah,
So they're still awful.
so
And
bad.
it made like a silhouette of this monster looking bear with like a deformed face, and it was terrifying. And so he's afraid of bears. So he just was sitting there staring at it on my screen, and I got like a multiple screen setup. So he's looking over here, and I'm like, okay, he's having a moment. I'm going to go back to work over here. And I start going back to what I was doing. And suddenly he just starts telling me about the bear. And he's like, his name's Captain Grizzly.
Mm.
And I was like, what? What's that? He's like, the bear, Dad. His name's Captain Grizzly. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's cute. It's a bear. It's cute. It's a fun name. And I kept on working. I was like, barely paying attention.
Right, right,
And then
right.
suddenly he's like, he's the captain of a pirate ship, and all the pirates are bears. And I was like, that's cute. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. And then he was like, they look for treasure, and the treasure looks like gold, but when they get it, they squeeze it, and it's really wax, and it looks like gold because it's filled with honey. Because bears like honey, Dad. And
Yeah,
when he said that, then suddenly I was like, I stopped typing, right? And I started like, wait, what? I realized he was like onto something.
yeah, he's building this out.
Yeah, and then this is like 20 seconds into the first conversation. He goes, "It's called the Grizzly Crew," and I was like, "Why are you already better at this than me?" And I started writing everything down, and then we started kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, and we were going all through the kinds of bears and who's on the boat and all this stuff,
Right.
so I immediately like. I put the AI aside. I didn't use any AI in the making of this or any of my projects. Just to put that out there. I'm not into it.
Uh-huh.
Just want to be clear,
It
right?
was an idea.
Um, it was literally like the first night the thing came out, and I was like, everyone's messing with it. I got to have the experience so that I know what it is I'm not using or whatever.
Hmm.
And so I reached out to my buddy Nick Justice, who's a great artist that I worked with through Blue Juice Comics, and I fed him all the characters, and he started sending us character designs. And then Harlan and I, my son's name is Harlan, we were bouncing the ideas back and forth about the story. And he's funny because like kids are impatient and they've only been alive for a short period of time. So time, like a couple of days is forever to him,
Oh yeah.
right? So he would go, is the book done yet? Like a week in. He's like, is it finished? I'm like, I haven't even written it yet. Like, slow down, buddy, like slow down. He's like, can we see some pages? I'm like, all right, who like are you the boss? Like he's the publisher,
Yeah.
Um so it was a really funny experience. And we kind of have been still bouncing ideas off of each other about future parts of the story. And I always take notes and we come back to things that we said and
Yeah.
kind of make stuff up. But it all kind of fell out of him and his fear of bears, and I think he was just processing it and came up with a funny story about bears. And so here we are.
Nice. It's funny because I'm sitting there over analyzing. I'm like, wait, I'm like getting like Muppets Treasure Island vibes from it and everything like that. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I,
He was like,
I felt myself. I was like, man, I was like, this is pretty close to it. I'm like, okay.
yeah, he was basically like, he's because he's so we a few months earlier I forget, we were in like North Carolina somewhere, and we were in the car, and my wife was like, are there bears around here, like just in passing, right? And
Yeah.
I think I said, yeah, there are bears in these woods, but you'll never see one. Like that was it, that was the whole conversation. And a few minutes later, like Harlan was really upset. He was like crying in the back at the
Oh,
vague idea that there were bears around. So he was really scared of them. And so I think this was like his way of kind of, he saw the scary bear pirate thing that I made, and then he
mhm.
was like processing it in his head. I think I probably have the image. I could probably show you if I can. Let me see if I can find it on my phone.
Right.
But um, it was a really fun experience, like going through it all with him and trying to figure out how to tell a story about a group of pirate bears, and is everyone in the story a bear or an anthropomorphic animal or what?
Mhm.
And we landed on no, they're not all. But yeah, I do have it. I have it. So this is what was on the screen when he walked in the room, right? This kind of thing. You can see that.
Oh,
It was like a
dang.
big, scary wasp monstery thing.
I mean, that actually
And
looks good.
yeah, well, again, it was, and this is like, if you feed an AI something really vague, it'll do like an okay job of making something that like looks like what you're asking for. But again, if you're being specific, or you want something that has like, this is the bear, that's the creepy. See the face?
Yikes. It's like his
Yeah,
eyeballs down by his mouth.
yeah, it's terrifying. It's like awful. It's like deformed. It looks like he has an extra leg back there. It's weird.
It's like if One-Eyed
I'm,
Willie was a bear.
yeah, it's kind of, yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's what he was staring at, and he just kind of came up with this story. And so, here we are.
Nice. And when have you told him about the concepts of Kickstarter and basically like, look,
Oh,
we're gonna put this out
oh,
there. It's gonna get
oh,
funded.
dude. When the campaign crossed over $1,000 in funding, he started asking me how much of the money was his.
See,
Like
I knew that was coming.
he gets it. Like he's like the concept of like he totally gets it. Like how many have we sold? He's like he's on top of
Well, he's in charge of creative IP, so he's looking for his
it.
percentage.
That's it. No, hey man, someone should think that way. I spent most of my life not thinking that way, and I definitely regret that.
But even in the overload of concepts, I mean, shoot, I feel like you putting this out at well, literally at the same time you were putting this out,
Yeah.
just felt like it was an overconsumption of what you were doing, and now you got yourself a kids friendly book and an anthology. But you've also
Yep.
in that period of time have taken over a popular IP that delves into horror with Reign of Dracula, and
Mhm.
even jumping into Cicada Samurai, which is pretty much going to be in our hands pretty soon. That's 4 projects in probably around 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, it's a lot. It definitely is a lot. I think I think part of why I've been able to like get through it while having 3 kids and a day job and all that is things like Reign of Dracula was all almost ready to go. Reign of Dracula, there was already a script for the first 2 issues. So Reign of Dracula is a continuation of Cult of Dracula and Rise of Dracula, written
Right.
by Rich Davis, and Les Lyndon Gardner is the artist now. And we did a campaign that ended up with like 20 something covers. It was like a ridiculous. I'm going to
I
be
remember.
fulfilling that fulfilling that campaign in my nightmares for the next like 15 months.
Mhm.
And but the book itself is like fantastic, and Les is just the Terminator when it comes to deadlines and completion and stuff. So the book was essentially almost finished. It's in letters now. He had to finish the last few pages. We're printing it. It's written as a 6-issue arc,
Mhm.
but we planned for Kickstarter to print it in 3 double issues. So it'll be
Mm.
a 46-page first issue, part 1. Part 2 will be another 46 or 48 pages, and so on for 3 parts. Um, but Rich had already written it, so it was really just he was
Yeah.
looking for someone to help him publish it, get it out there, and he wanted to do a Kickstarter. He hadn't done one before, and I was almost done with Cicada Samurai, and I had done another one with Blue Juice Comics. So so we partnered up on it, and it was a challenging thing. I don't know if I'd ever do that many covers on anything ever again, unless I had a team of people
Yeah.
you know, like a group of people. That's all they do is manage that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm not there yet, so it'll be a while before I do that again. But that was a lot of fun, and it's kind of I'm a little bit all over the place now because Cicada Samurai was kind of an anime looking action story, and then
Hmm.
Reign of Dracula is more of like a gothicy horror story,
Yep.
literally taking place in heaven and hell. This story, and like in black and white, really dark. Cicada Samurai was really bright and colorful,
Hmm.
and then the Grizzly Crew looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like that
It
was the
does.
idea. That was the whole idea behind it. And then, the anthology is like anything you can imagine. And we could talk about that if you want. You want to get into the anthology because that also. When does this drop? When does this appear in people's inboxes?
Ah, what this campaign?
Yeah, no, like our conversation here. Like we're not live, so when does this?
Probably this will probably be dropping tomorrow.
Okay, great. All right. So, because the Grizzly Crew, I think, will be over because
Yeah.
it's over tomorrow morning. So
Mhm.
if you're listening, if you're watching, you will have just missed it.
Yeah,
But
right,
you
right,
can,
right.
but if you want to go find it, it'll probably I'm going to set up the backer kit store pretty soon, so you'll be able to pre-order it if you missed the campaign. So
Good.
just follow Thorny Comics and all that, and you can find it that way. That's the one I did with my son. Um, but yeah, the anthology is going for another two weeks now.
Yeah, because
I'm really excited about that.
I remember when this campaign pretty much first hit.
Mhm.
And I've been subscribed to the Our Best Jackett series on Substack
Oh,
by
you're in,
Scott Snyder for a little bit. Not one of the paid ones, but I'm one of the ones that like listen to a lot of the podcasts that he put up for the writing class and everything like that.
right?
But I remember when the first one came out, and I
Mhm.
was like, I've always been a fan of anthologies, whether it's been done in a comic medium, whether it's been short stories that were just done in books, or
Right.
whether it was even done in a movie medium. Like I like vignettes that like Creep Show and Twilight
Oh
Zone,
yeah.
thing like that.
Oh
Like
yeah,
Twilight
those are
Zone the
awesome.
movie and Creep Show the movie, to where
Yeah.
I got these short stories. So each one of these, there's probably around like 20 stories in the first one, 18 in the second one. Each
Right.
one's about 4 to 6 pages, and they all delve into a little bit of they all have the same symbolism, and it's all the jacket.
The Jackett. Yeah.
Yeah. So which I thought was like really cool. And it's super, like super good, rich stories in here. Like I
Yeah.
think there was one called The Human Experiment about a couple robots that I guess they were raising a human child, and they had to get this human child off of the planet.
Yeah.
And
I know the story.
yeah,
I
and
know the story because we're actually there's a human experiment part two.
in this one, uh,
Not in the first issue, but coming later in a
got
future
you.
issue of the Cloakroom. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Tales from the Cloakroom is awesome, and they were so the backstory is a couple of not a couple, I think the first volume was like three or I think it was three people, and it was three people in Scott's class. Scott Snyder does his writing workshop through his Substack, Our Best Jacket,
Right,
and
right, right.
so three people in the class decided they were going to put together an anthology of stories from everyone in the class that became Tales from the Cloakroom. And Cloakroom is sort of a play on Our Best Jacket, so it's all connected that way. But
Hmm.
it's all created by people who are in Scott's class, the editors, the publishers, everyone who put it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, and there's been what I guess two iterations of this class.
Yeah,
There was one-on-one that was basically all through signups, all through subscribers when Substack first got on, and
right,
I guess with this very first one that came out, it just went from the writing class. It was like, hey, we're just gonna all just start forming our own comics, and then it was like,
right,
by the way, we're gonna all put this in one anthology book that's gonna get released later on. And then
right.
then also all of a sudden, like there was the second class hit, and it was almost the same thing. And I was like, these stories are real good. And I always felt
Yeah,
like it was good for creators, of course,
there was
that
a,
wanted to get out there for the very first time. Artists as well, that wanted to put out their own stories for the very first time. And this is they're all good.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Like, I think Scott does this whole thing where it's kind of he loves teaching, he loves talking about the craft, and so we had it's this big collection of hundreds and thousands of people who are listening to him talk about the process. A lot of us are aspiring, comic book creators ourselves, and so I think people just needed an outlet. Like as soon as someone in the class said, "Hey, I'll take it over as a project and let's publish our stories and connect it to Scott and the Substack and all that," kind of like tangentially, not like directly, but Scott has been super supportive of it. He lets us put his name on the cover.
Yeah,
Scott Snyder
yeah,
presents,
yeah.
and yeah, and so they did one issue, they did one volume, and it's kind of a Herculean task getting together 20 short stories for a volume. And so that group of editors decided they weren't going to do it again. So a different group of people in the class did volume two, and kind of picked up the mantle a year
Yep.
later. And then I joined the class sometime in between volumes one and two. A lot of the conversation about this happens on the Discord, and I wasn't on Discord until
Okay,
more recently.
got you.
So I missed the first campaign. I bought in on the second campaign, and then that group of editors were like, a lot of them are still in school. Like some of
Yeah,
them are very young. Yeah, and so they were like, well, I'm doing my master's this year, and I can't do another one. So it was going to fall to another group of people to the mantle for this thing again. And so my partner on it is Veronica Howell, who's also in the class. And we decided, why don't we, instead of trying to get together, because we both, I have a day job, she's busy, I have three kids, it's kind of crazy. So instead of trying to pull together 20, 18 or 20 stories and doing a volume, we turned it into a quarterly, like sort of a magazine. So
ah,
every 3 months there'll be a new issue of, we shortened the title too. So now it's just called The Cloakroom, and so it's Scott Snyder presents the Cloakroom. The first issue is on Kickstarter right now. It'll be on until March 12th. We've already hit our funding goal, so it's guaranteed that it's going to be printed. So it's safe, to do that. And there are 7 stories in
mhm.
the first issue. They range from 4 pages up to, I think, our biggest one, I think, is I want to say 10. It might be 12. There might be a 12 pager in there. Um, and so yeah, if anyone is looking at it, it's you're supporting literally like the most independent of indie comics. Like we're pulling it together. We're not, Veronica and I are not, even though it's being published by my imprint, Thorny Comics, we're not taking a profit. We're not like we're actually probably going to be out of pocket a little bit when all is said and
Oh
done.
wow.
But we wanted the experience, like we're paying for our own experience. We wanted to be editors. We wanted the experience of working with new writers.
Right,
Some of
right,
them are
right.
more experienced writers. We wanted to exercise that like mental muscle because it's different from when you're writing your own story. It's very different.
Sure.
Like, and
And
so kind of,
oh no, no, no. I read over a lot of the story descriptions and
yeah,
they seem real fascinated. Suicide by Zombie, Widowmaker,
yeah.
like how these are more so transformed. Because I can imagine how the first ones were and how they were like formulated. Is it all the same symbolization from the first two?
So we're not doing that. So the first two had sort of a prompt. They
Yes.
wanted everyone to kind of write about the jacket,
Okay.
and we decided to forego that, and we kind of
Mm.
we kept the name the Cloakroom to kind of stay in the family with the Substack and the previous two iterations of the book, and also as just like an homage. Like again, it's a cloakroom because it's all kind of the theme is really just what have you learned from Scott's class that you can apply to something that you've created.
Hmm.
And so that's what all these books are. And so we actually have a lot of pages in the printed version of it that are not even story. So I think there's 50 something pages of story in this
Right.
first issue. And it's just an issue, and then we're like it's big enough that it's coming perfect bound. It's not going to be stapled. It's going to be perfect bound book. And then each the pages are divided by a one page thing where the creator for that story will talk about what they took from Scott's class, what they learned from it, and kind of how they're applying it to what the story they're telling,
Correct.
which is awesome. You've listened to the podcast. Like people listen to him talk about it, and then we've had everyone in the class, like all the people who created stories for the book. It runs the gamut from like one time Scott said that a good way to set up a mystery story
Yeah.
is to have three characters and one of them doesn't know what the other two are up to, and it's a very basic like simple setup, but one of our creators went home and wrote a story with that setup that night, and
Right.
that'll be in an issue of the Cloakroom at some point. And so there's other times where it's just hearing other people, because Scott he'll take students work and kind of critique it in the class.
Hmm.
And so other people have just said just the fact that Scott Snyder is taking these completely unknown people's work and like showing it, and like other people are out there making their books, and that
Right.
inspired me to make my book. So it runs the gamut from all those things, like just kind of inspirational and or just an idea, something he said, or something that Kyle Higgins or Will Dennis or one of his guests said.
And it seems like that's the way he talks. So if you listen to a lot of those, and the podcasts are they're formulated podcasts, but they're like 7 to 10 minutes long,
Yeah,
and he'll go through a particular portion of how, like I think the last one I listened to was how to implicate genre, and then
right,
all the while he's talking about how he's formulating the writing for the show Witches that's going to drop on Amazon Prime,
right.
but or how comics has had a good relationship with horror. Like that's
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, and he'll do interviews with other creators that are sometimes longer episodes. He'll do full-on classes where he's critiquing work. There's actually an Eisner nominated short story in the first volume of that.
Mm.
So the Beekeepers do
The
got an
beekeepers
Eisner.
do, yeah, at the end of the
Beekeepers
book,
do,
end of volume
yeah,
one. Yep.
yep, and that was an Eisner nominated story for best short story that year. So it's like there are a lot of really smart, good, up and coming, young, just inexperienced, new, not even young necessarily, just new. There's a lot of people like me who are I'm in my 40s and I just haven't done this before, so I'm in the
Mhm.
class. Um, it's great. The whole thing has been a great experience, and working with my partner with Veronica Howell on it has been wonderful. She's like organized in all kinds of ways that I'm not, so like we make a good team.
Right.
And we've got the first issue is almost completely finished. The campaign is over in 2 weeks. By the time the campaign's over, the pages will be done.
Hmm.
And we've already got a lot of work done on the second issue, which is still 3 months out. And so every 3 months there'll be a new one until Scott tells us to stop,
Gotcha.
basically.
When exactly, since this is now in your hands and
Mhm.
you now have the ability to where you've gotten one funded already. When is one of these short stories going to be you?
So Veronica and I just like we talked about that early on because we're both writers too, and we not
Hmm.
neither of us. I don't think I want to put one of my own stories in the book until 3 or 4 issues in at the
Okay.
earliest. I want
Good.
it to be because I have another outlet. I make my own creator owned stuff that I'm publishing myself to, and I think I like that this project is a way for me to meet all of my classmates to work with them on something. I like that part of it. So if I just published my own thing in there, I don't know. I feel like it would be self-serving. So I might not ever do it,
Oh, okay.
but we'll see.
Now, would you say that like as far as anthologies go, were you a fan of like the vignettes, like the Alfred Hitchcock Presents
Oh
type
yeah,
storylines?
oh yeah. I used to love Amazing Stories when I was a kid. That TV
Yeah,
show. Yeah, I mean, my geek thing when I was young was TV. So all my creative stuff like that is like, you know, um, what is the Crypt Keeper? Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt.
Like
Yep.
yeah, that was another like really goofy, funny horror thing. I used to love
Hmm.
that. What's the more recent show was Black Mirror, right?
Black Mirror is like, yep. Hmm.
Yeah, great. Like I love those kinds of like twisted. You get a taste of some of what like twisted story is in one other person's mind
Right.
for 10 minutes, an hour. One issue, a couple of pages, like whatever it is. It's nice, like being able to dip in and dip back out of something like that. It's really kind of like a fun little, just a moment. You get to have a
Hmm.
moment, and it can be perfect, and it doesn't need to be this big sprawling story all the time. Sometimes it's nice that it's like here's a moment that's twisted and fun, and
Hmm.
wasn't that like awesome? And sometimes it's awesome.
Yeah, I vaguely remember always from even not only just the movies, but even some of those TV shows. They would actually have some real good A-list actors
Oh
doing
yeah,
those shows.
oh yeah, yeah. They used to love that stuff. The actors used to, because again, for them it's a day. Like they go for a day. They do it for a day.
Yeah,
It's like fun. They get to be out there. They get to take risks. You used to see like on the old Twilight Zone and stuff like that, and you'd see actors who were coming on to play a character that they would never play in a movie.
yeah.
So I think it just let them like, do you want William Shatner on your thing like back in the original Twilight Zone? You
Hmm.
know, he comes and he does whatever he wants, but you get William Shatner and it gets to be weird.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of fun that way. So like actors, I think love doing that. They love like having a day. Again, it's a day of something weird and
Yep.
twisted. A couple
It's
of days of
the
work.
it's the John Lithgow who's like the most serene actor in Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
The gremlin on the plane scene.
Yep.
They're
Yeah.
like I can still remember that in my head
Mhm.
consistently.
Yep.
Like it's one of the craziest things ever. A guy just everybody understands that story, like about Gremlins. Gremlins, of course, being such a famous IP in the movie, but
Right.
the actual folklore of Gremlins being something of a fictional creature that takes apart things in midair.
Right. Yep.
So as far as Thorny Comics and
Yes, sir.
how you've been building this brand and how fast you've been building this brand. What is the hopes now for how you're formulating your year? Because you've kickstarted already. It's only February.
I know. I am probably going to slow down for 2 months
Hmm.
at least and catch up on fulfillment.
Okay.
So I owe that I've Cicada Samurai was my first campaign. So far people have gotten the digital copy.
Hmm.
The printed copy is at the printer now. I'll have that in my hand in 2 weeks, I think, and then I'll start shipping it immediately.
Hmm.
Rain Dracula is in surveys right now, so that'll be right behind that. And then I'll have Cicada, I'll have Grizzly Crew and the Cloakroom to do, and we're already prepping a new Cloakroom issue. So that'll be up in 3 months. So I what I've been doing is trying not to think too much about building it right away as a brand
Hmm.
because I'm just starting to get into this really, and I'm enjoying it. And part of what I'm enjoying right now, at least, is that I'm kind of all over the map. I've
Yeah.
got like an all ages story, a horror thing, like Cicada Samurai, is sort of an amber, like they're all kind of completely different kinds of stories. Um, and I'm enjoying that part of it. I'm enjoying that I'm kind of a little bit everywhere. I think when I start focusing on building Thorny Comics as a brand, I will probably want to narrow down and kind of focus on a genre, or a couple of genres, so people know, you come to Thorny Comics for a certain kind of story. You find a niche of people who are really into that and kind of build an audience that way. But right now, I'm kind of enjoying that I'm a little bit all over the place. So for this year, what I'm hoping is by the end of the year, I have completed Kickstarters for two more, one, two, oh, good Lord, three more. What am I talking? I'm making it sound like I'm going to take it lightly, and then I'm realizing how many things it is.
Yeah.
Two, at least two more issues of the Cloakroom.
Okay.
Um, one more Cicada Samurai, one more Grizzly Crew, and depending on how production goes with Rich and Les on Reign of Dracula, whenever that is ready, I'll be ready to kickstart that again.
Nice.
But that's like five more books.
It
It's
is
like, what
five
am
more
I?
books.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna take it easy for the rest of the year, and it's like, so
Well, as soon as you get into the latter end of the summer, you're preparing for con season now. Is there an
yeah.
expectation of Thorny Comics like taking basically all these publicized Kickstarters and their indie comic books on the road?
I am not ready to do that yet. I'm
Okay.
focusing on building my library a little bit first. I just don't. I've been to enough conventions with Blue Juice Comics, and I went to and I've seen writers and artists who are there. I have to start building a ground game, but
Mhm.
I just would want another couple of things to put out on the table before I show up and do a banner and buy a table at somewhere.
Yeah.
When I do start doing it, I'm going to hit smaller ones first, definitely.
Gotcha.
Like I've done New Jersey Comic Fest, Brooklyn Comic Con. There was a slightly larger, like mid-sized convention in Fairfax that I did that I really liked, Fairfax Comic Con in Virginia.
Mhm.
So I'd probably do a bunch of those for a year, or two before I even think about like hitting one of the big ones as Thorny Comics.
Gotcha.
Um, that said, I still work a lot with Blue Juice Comics. I'll go, like, we're probably going to go to MegaCon next year.
Mm.
Um, we're
Okay.
talking we're talking about we're talking about Baltimore next year. There's a couple we've been
Yeah.
in discussions about. So, if I have books ready, I'll bring them and they'll be at the table with Blue Juice.
Nice. Now, as far as fulfillment goes, you've now played your hand at being creator and publisher. Which
Mm.
one, which one are you liking more?
I, it's like it's a terrible answer, but I like both, and for very different reasons.
Okay.
I, I've always, like, as a writer and a creator, like I work in television too, and I feel like I've always been a better editor. Like if you give me a blank page, I'll just stare at it forever before I get
Mhm.
started. I'll just stare at it literally forever. Um, but if you give me a pile of stuff, if you give me like a bunch of footage, I'll sit with an editor and we'll figure out how to tell a story.
Mhm.
If I have a bunch of stuff in front of me to work with, I'm like, it's like a, what do they call, like a textile learner? Like a,
Yeah.
I like to I like to feel it and like move
Mhm.
the pieces around. But I'm not always great at sitting down and forcing myself to actually create the pieces from nothing. So I've enjoyed doing that a lot on Grizzly Crew and on Cicada Samurai. But on Cloakroom, I've really enjoyed working with other writers and helping them make the best version of the story they want to tell, and kind of training myself not to think of things like, well, here's how I would write it if I were you, which is not not what an editor does.
Right.
The idea is to kind of like ask questions, discuss it, kind of talk about how certain parts of it sound and feel to me, and then kind of help them, get the thing across that they want to get across in the best way possible. But
Yeah.
like for them, for their story, I want them to feel like they look at it and they're proud of it and happy with it, more than like me thinking like this is how I would write this dialogue. Like it's not
Mhm.
about that. And I've really enjoyed that. I've really, really enjoyed. I think I just like collaborating. So I like being in the room, and like talking through the ideas.
Well, definitely. I mean, if your experience as a TV writer has shown that, and the way that basically you've been able to formulate things that have gone onto the screen, because I obviously, aside from just reading it, you can see it.
Right.
So I can imagine how that is. I mean, I'm more of an observer than anything, but I totally understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've really enjoyed both. I think it's definitely rewarding in a way that nothing else is when you write something and you like work with an artist on it, and then it's finished and you can hold it in your hands and look at it and be like, I made this thing. And I think you always kind of look at it and find little things that you would write differently now, even like a few weeks later, a few months later, years later. But there is nothing more like satisfying than that. Making
Hmm.
something and it's done and now it's in the world and you did it, you know? That's like a really just rewarding feeling and experience. And so I definitely love that part of it.
Right. Now taking Tales from the Cloakroom from a medium like Substack and the way that they've done these two books and putting it out there, what do you feel is like the best, I guess, accomplishment of putting out a group of young writers' stories for the very first time?
Um, what do you mean?
No, I mean like mainly from the standpoint that like you got a bunch of young writers that have probably never published anything. And generally through these first two books, this was their first crack at anything. So like
Right.
on your end, you get to do it. You have your hand in putting out brand new stories from somebody who probably has never put out a comic book in their life. Like does that seem more fulfilling than anything as well?
I mean, that's pretty. That is also very fulfilling. The experience level of the people in the class is kind of all over the map. Like some people have had short, mini series published with small press publishers and stuff in the past. Some people have been self publishing for a while. There's a lot of people in the class like me who've been run a few like smaller Kickstarter campaigns and have been just putting their own like one or two issues or something like that out there. Um, I'd say the what's the nicest part of it, and I hope this continues, is it's like a whole community of people that kind of sprouted up around Scott, and it's all super supportive. And like
Hmm.
the way Scott always talks about like him and his generation of comic writers who are all huge now, and like he came up with a class of people, and then there's like a class of people behind him who are like 10 years younger and are 10 years newer to the whole thing and are popular now. And then there's like us,
Hmm.
some people from this class are going to be, Donnie Cates and James Tynan in like 10 years, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the idea is that I really enjoyed being part of that because I know that some of these people I'm working with are going to hit it. They're going to decide that this is what they're going to do for a living, and like someday I'm going to pick up a Spider-Man comic and I'm going to be like, I published this guy's first short story, and that's going to be like just a nice little moment for me. And I
Yeah.
hope that like I hope that if I'm able to keep growing Thorny Comics the way that I think I will, in the future, and I'm eventually putting books in stores and doing more traditional distribution in addition to the indie stuff, the kind of direct to customer stuff on Kickstarter. I would love for a couple of these writers to come back to me and be like, I have a series, like
Yeah.
let's do a series together. That's kind of the goal. I think that we can all kind of keep growing our creative, endeavors together and kind of I think we'll water each other's crops and stuff. I think that'll be nice.
Absolutely, man. So, hey, I appreciate you doing this with me.
Oh, of course.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, man. Especially now that I know I'm gonna have Cicada Samurai in my hands pretty soon. But of course, Tales from the Cloakroom has another 2 weeks as far as the campaign is concerned.
Mhm.
Grizzly Crew is pretty much going to be done after today, so
Yes, sir.
hopefully they'll be able to get their hands on it. You said through your website, possibly the backer kits, they'll be able to push that on the back end.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is I own thornycomics.com, and so I've just been redirecting it to whatever I'm doing right now.
Oh,
So right now, like if you did it right now, like as we're speaking, it would go to the Kickstarter campaign. After this, the Grizzly Crew. After the Grizzly Crew ends tomorrow morning, I'll redirect it again to the Cloakroom. And so anyone who looks up thornycomics.com, it'll go to the Cloakroom campaign.
right.
Probably a week from now, I'll have a pre-order store set up for the Grizzly Crew, and then I'll redirect it again. So if you're ever looking for what I'm doing right now or what's available from Thorny Comics, you just go to thornycomics.com and it'll automatically take you to whatever's next.
Excellent. Excellent, man. And definitely tell your son to keep the ideas coming.
I will. Oh, I did. I started. I invested in like a little recording app on my phone. So next time he walks into my office and goes, "Hey, Dad, let me tell you about like foxes." I'm gonna just hit record and
Hmm.
start
Like go off,
start keeping
man.
notes. Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me whatever you want to say, buddy.
Absolutely. So Jerry, I appreciate this again, man. This was real good. So congratulations to you for the Grizzly Crew. and look forward to in the next couple of weeks when this anthology is pretty much done their campaign, and we'll be able to get that out there in fulfillment as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. So for James Grandmaster Facts and the Facts Project, Jerry Carita with Thorny Comics, go out there, get Tales from the Cloakroom right now. All right. So from the Facts Project, we are out.